the biggest impact of COVID on our economy isn't necessarily just the immediate recession that we're seeing right now, but it's the fact that millions of people around the world are going to see serious mental health issues as a result. Joining me to talk about this very serious issue is JR Rahn, founder and CEO of MindMed. JR, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
JR, you are the CEO and founder of MindMed, which is a company that produces drugs that can help people with mental health issues. Now, before we talk about your company, tell us about the story. Why is this so important, and what are the biggest risks you see ahead for our economy and our society at large?
Well, look, there's two mental health emergencies declared in the United States right now. One of those is the opioid crisis. The second is COVID-19. These are problems that are ravaging North America. But what I think a lot of people don't understand is that the vaccine is going to come. We are going to get through COVID, but the lasting effects on our mental health and addiction are going to be around for the next 10 to 20 years. And these are far larger problems and far larger markets that are going to evolve. And unfortunately, I believe that North America's next great growth story is mental illness and addiction.
Okay, now you were giving me some stats offline. 11% of Americans in June recorded suicidal tendencies, and 40% had mental conditions. These are really serious numbers. How did this come about?
Well, look, I think mental health and addiction skyrocket when people are out of a job. It's just a natural thing to wake up and not have something to do that you're going to turn to thinking about killing yourself or consuming a very addictive substance. And this is really, really scary because the figures around suicide doubled during COVID from the year before. And we just see the potential to derail the economy because of this having a huge impact. Mental health costs the American economy $2.5 trillion a year. The opioid crisis, $500 billion a year. These aren't just problems that are at home. They are going to start affecting the economy as well.
A lot of economists are predicting that the economy is going to recover. People are going to go back on track now. I've heard the counter argument as well. But just going on the side of the economy being on the road to recovery and people returning to work, do you see this problem improving anytime soon?
I never really saw it improving, and here's the reason. The reason that I set up MindMed as a company was the very fact that I read I believe it was a McKinsey report that said 800 million people were going to be out of a job by 2030 because of AI and automation. That's scary, right? That all just got accelerated drastically because of COVID-19.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about automation in a minute. You were also telling me about a science experiment done on animals where animals kept in isolation showed symptoms of depression. What does that link to humans now?
Well, those experiments were called the rat park models, and they took two sets of rats. They put some rats by themselves in their own cages, and then they built a little mini city where the rats could go around and interact with each other. The rats that were in isolation, the amount of addictive substances that they were consuming while in isolation went up 19-fold. The biggest rat park model in human history just happened. It's called COVID-19. We've all been sitting around in our apartments in four-walled boxes, and the bottle of wine looks pretty interesting at the end of the night.
Yeah, so what do you think people have been doing to counteract this boredom and this road to depression? I mean, clearly people have taken on other activities in the last couple months, have they not?
Sure. I mean, I think social media usage is increasing. And I think as a lot of us have probably watched on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, this isn't helping your mental health either. It's probably compounding the impact. I think, look, people are going to have to get back out into nature and really, sort of understand themselves better, but we're going to need solutions to mental health and addiction. And the current solutions aren't working. SSRIs, not working. Anxiety medications like Xanax, those are just masking the problem. They're highly addictive. And we need to really reimagine how we treat mental health in North America.
Well, maybe let me pause the counter argument then. Perhaps as we become accustomed to working from home and working remotely, maybe we'll start to develop a habit around that and people will become less depressed. Do you think that could be an outcome?
Look, I mean, we don't have, we got rid of our office in the midst of COVID. We went entirely on Zoom. We're based on Zoom. We are highly effective just because we're an international company. I think people are going to learn to work in this new world. But I also think they're going to learn to take time away from the screen, because there is a new potential mental effect coming, which is called Zoom fatigue, and I think a lot of people are starting to feel that. So let's see how it turns out. But it's definitely a new way of working.
You talked about automation as well. This is obviously a longer term trend. By 2030, I think the report said that about 30 to 40% of Americans, or people around the world rather, are going to be completely out of work because of machines. How is this going to impact mental health, JR?
Look, I think it's either going to be an apocalypse or a renaissance. I mean, I think for the way that we're looking at it right now, it's looking like an apocalypse. I think people, when they wake up in the morning, they don't have something to do. That's not good. You're going to see rates of addiction skyrocket even further. You're going to see more mental health incidents. And the stark reality is we don't have the infrastructure or the medicines to really help these people. So until we get there, we're not going to have the renaissance. But when we do get to the other side of this thing, people are going to have more time on their hands to do things that they actually enjoy, and not nominal tasks that really, a piece of AI could be capable of doing and probably should be doing.
JR, tell us about your company now. Tell us about the drugs that you're creating to help alleviate this problem.
Look, I think when you have desperate times, you are willing to really look at anything as a potential. And what we understood were that psychedelic therapies and psychedelic medicines had vast untapped value in solving large problems in society, including mental health and addiction. And so MindMed was set up to discover, develop, and ultimately deploy psychedelic medicines for people in need. So we were the first publicly listed company on the senior exchange NEO in Canada, and we just recently are filed an application to list on the NASDAQ.
You have an interesting story on how Kevin O'Leary of O'Leary Ventures is involved with your company. Tell us that story.
So when I first presented the concept of using LSD-assisted therapy and psychedelics to Kevin, he basically got up after about 5 minutes into our conversation in Toronto and said, my name is not Timothy Leary, it's Kevin O'Leary, and I'm not investing into this thing. It's totally crazy. And he went away for 2 days, and I got a call back, and he said, look, I'm interested in this. This could actually, if it can actually help to solve the opioid crisis, if it can help to solve 40 million Americans with anxiety, this is something my team should get involved in. And I think he was pressured by a lot of the folks on his team at O'Leary Ventures, including Alex Kenjeev and Nancy Chung, because, this is a really impactful investment for him. And that's why I believe he's been so much behind what we are doing.
This wasn't on Shark Tank, right?
This was not on Shark Tank. I don't think this is something that would go on Shark Tank. But we clearly think we're on to something here, and we're building a whole new asset class of medicines. This is going to be a new industry. There's, one of our peers in our industry, Compass Pathways, just had a very successful listing on NASDAQ in an IPO, and we're very excited to also get down and be dual listed on the NASDAQ, subject to the exchange's approval.
So it is a new asset class, like you said. This is newly listed on public exchanges. As an investor, let's say, I'm not familiar with this asset class. Convince me that this is adding value to my portfolio.
Look, what we are doing is going to create large value to society. And I think that anything that creates a large value to society will ultimately have a good outcome for our investors. We have to get approvals. We have to get FDA clinical trial approvals in order for this to work. So there are going to be outcomes that are binary, but we feel that our broad spectrum of a pipeline in the clinical trials that we're bringing to the FDA are going to give us a pretty good shot to build a very large company and pioneer a whole new asset class of medicines. And I think that's a really important place for somebody to have in their portfolio if they see mental health and addiction growing in society, which they should, because COVID-19 just accelerated that fact.
Thanks very much, JR, for coming on the show. That was a fascinating talk. Best of luck with your company and for listing on the NASDAQ.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching Kitco News. We'll have much more for you. Stay tuned.